Okay, so good evening, everybody. As you may have already seen, the lecture this evening is going to be about snakes. And here to greet you, I have prepared a picture of beautiful emerald tree boa from the Amazon basin. So let's start. First of all, a question for you: what is a snake?
Snake is a reptile.
A reptile, first of all, very important. But also crocodiles are reptiles, lizards are reptiles, turtles are reptiles.
It's got no limbs.
Yeah.
No limbs, true that. So a reptile with no limbs.
Is a snake.
Yeah, snakes are definitely reptiles with no limbs, but are all reptiles with no limbs snakes?
Yes.
Because I wouldn't say so.
Oh, yes.
This is a Barton's legless lizard. You can find it all across Australia. It's really, really common down there. It's pretty small, actually. It gets to no more than ½ meter. And it's not the only one. There are actually very many species of legless lizards in the world, some also in Europe. So, yeah, being limbless and being a reptile is not enough to be a snake. So, we still have to look a bit closer to it. If we want to be more precise, a snake is basically, a limbless carnivorous reptile with no ears nor eyelids, which, by contrast, lizards have. So here you see the picture of this beautiful eastern indigo snake from the southern United States. You see no eyelids here and no ears here. So, some other general information: snakes belong to the order Squamata, which includes also lizards. The two are very closely related. And in the world there are about 3,000 species of snakes, pretty a lot, but only around 400, I'm not sure about the precise number, I think 375 are venomous, so a bit more than a tenth. They live all over the world, as you can see here. Basically you can find them from Norway to South Africa to Australia, and also in both the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is a bit too cold for sea snakes. Snakes are also pretty old in age. They appeared on Earth in late Cretaceous, so around 100 million years ago, maybe a bit later. But they are actually the most recent group of reptiles, because crocodiles, lizards, and turtles are all much older than snakes. How are they classified? There are a lot of snake families. Here I mention only 4, the most important 4, let's say, because otherwise it would get really, really too complicated. So we're going to start with boas and pythons, to then go to the colubrids, the most numerous ones, so grass snakes, twig snakes, king snakes, corn snakes, and whatever thing you can put before the word snake is here, basically. So then the elapids, and now we get to the dangerous ones: cobras, pandas, sprites, coral snakes, and mostly snakes, all elapids, and the vipers, of course. Vipers, pit vipers, adders, and whatever you can think of in that range. So, boas and pythons first. They belong to the families Boidae and Pitonidae. They are among the most primitive snakes. In fact, they even have, especially boas, they even have some remains of vestigial limbs close to their tail. So from there, scientists have postulated that snakes were originally evolved from lizard-like ancestors and then lost their limbs when they went to live underground, basically. So boas and pythons are not venomous, or at least there is some mildly toxic compound in their saliva, maybe, but that's not the way they kill their prey, which they do conversely by constriction. They coil around their prey and squeeze, basically. And for many years, scientists have tried to figure out how constriction works, because first people thought that boas and pythons coil around their prey to break their bones, but this is definitely not true, because even if those snakes are incredibly strong, and they are, trust me, they are not strong enough to break all the bones of a large-sized prey. So this is not the way it works. Then, much more plausible was the hypothesis that they basically choked their prey to death with their embrace, preventing the prey from breathing, so the prey would suffocate. But in the last few years, some researchers have found out that in many cases, the respiratory failure is induced by basically a block in blood circulation. So probably that is the main effect of snake squeezing on a prey, and then that obviously induces respiratory failure, because if blood is blocked, no oxygen can reach the tissues, and yeah, you already know that. So differences between boas and pythons. Boas are generally ovoviviparous, so they give birth to live babies. The eggs hatch in the mother's body, basically. So then she gives birth to live babies, while pythons are all oviparous, so they lay eggs like you would expect from a snake. Boas, basically, you can find boas all over the world, mostly in Central and South America. Like you see here, this is boa constrictor, a reptile boa, one of the most famous snakes in the world, and also one of the most common ones. It can reach about 3.5 to 4 meters. It is the third largest snake in the American continent. And yeah, it preys on mainly rodents, or also monkeys and sloths, as it lives in rainforests, and obviously birds. Then here you find the reticulated python, the longest snake in the world. It can reach 10 meters, although on average it doesn't go much beyond 6. You can find it in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, and in the Philippines. It's actually a pretty common snake, and it feeds on very large prey like antelopes or goats or pigs or even deers. So pythons, as the reticulated python shows, are found mainly in Asia and Africa, and also in Australia. Then we go to colubrids, the largest snake family. About almost 2,000 species out of 3,000 snake species belong to this family. They live all around the world, basically. You can find them in Canada, even in Siberia, as well as in African and Asian deserts. And most of them are harmless, not venomous, but some do have toxins in there as their saliva, as we will see by looking at these two pictures. First, there is the grass snake, which is the most common snake in the world when we speak of geographic range. Yeah, you can find it from Portugal to Iran, from Egypt to Norway, even here in the Netherlands. It's a pretty common snake. It gets to 2 meters in length, not venomous again, and it's a mostly aquatic snake, so it feeds mainly on fish, but it also eats lizards and small rodents. And on the bottom you find the boomslang, which lives in sub-Saharan Africa, mostly South Africa. It's an arboreal snake, which gets also to 2 meters long, no more usually. And even though it is a colubrid, it is one of the 10 most venomous snakes in the world. And it's interesting, this snake is very interesting, because until the 50s, people thought that it was completely harmless. Up to you to figure out how they found out it was that venomous. Basically, 2 herpetologists who were on a research expedition in Africa got their hands on a boomslang, and believing that it was completely harmless, they just held it and they didn't care about bites and stuff. Then one of them died, and so people started wondering if maybe this snake was actually venomous, and it definitely is, even though the victims are really low. Very few people die for the bite of this snake. So, and also here you see a green one, but actually only adult males are green, because females and young specimens are brown. I chose this picture because I'm sexist, of course. Then elapids. Well, even if you look at the first picture, you understand why elapids are among the most famous snakes in the world. So all cobras are elapids, all mambas are elapids. This is a black mamba, by the way. They are diffused in North and South America, only coral snakes, which is a distinct group of elapids, and mostly Africa, Asia, and Australia and Oceania. All of them are venomous, and many are lethal for humans. So here you see the king cobra, the longest venomous snake in the world, which reaches 5.5 meters. And yeah, you can find it in Western India and all around Southeast Asia and Indonesia. It is highly venomous, even though its venom is less potent than that of other cobras. But the fact is that this snake injects about 500 milligrams of venom with a single bite, which is a huge dose. Believe me, it's really a very extremely large dose, so that it can kill an adult Indian elephant with just a bite. Interestingly, the king cobra feeds only on other snakes, and as you can see from its Latin name, because Ophiophagus means snake eater, literally. So also cannibalism is pretty frequent. So it is immune to the venom of any other venomous snake in the area. So it is immune to the venom of other cobras, of vipers, of kraits. So it can eat all of them basically. And on the bottom you see the black mamba, my favorite snake personally, which is the second longest venomous snake in the world after this guy. It lives in savannas in sub-Saharan Africa, and it is the 10th most venomous snake in the world. It feeds on rodents, birds, lizards, and other snakes as well. And just a quick note: it is the fastest snake in the world. It can go, it can basically run up to 20 kilometers per hour or even more, which is really impressive if you consider that it has no legs. And actually, as you can see here, the black mamba, in spite of its name, is not black. It's mostly brown or grayish. The inner part of its mouth is black, and when the black mamba is threatened, it just opens its mouth to scare its opponent and basically saying, "Don't mess with me, you're gonna regret it," which would definitely be the case. Lastly, the vipers, the most recently evolved snakes. They live all over the world. All of them are venomous, and again, as elephants, many are lethal for humans. And as we will see later, the so-called pit vipers, so rattlesnakes, lanceheads, and related snakes, present heat-sensing organs on their head. You see here one of them, the eastern diamondback rattlesnake from the southeastern United States. It is the largest rattlesnake in the world. It gets to 2.5 meters, even 3 sometimes. It is highly venomous, and it feeds on rodents, birds, lizards, and amphibians. Actually, an anecdote: this snake is basically the only snake in Florida that eats rabbits. So at some point, people in a certain zone in Florida decided to get rid of those snakes because some people died after bites, and also people were afraid of them. So they basically killed them all. But then rabbits started to invade cultures, to destroy crops and etc. because there was no regulator of the rabbit population. So people preferred reintroducing the rattlesnakes in the area just to control the spread of rabbits. Well, on the bottom you see the puff adder, one of the most common snakes in Africa. The puff adder is actually a pretty small snake. It doesn't grow more than 1.5 meters, but it is really highly venomous. So we have seen one of the foremost important snake families. So now let's go to some more general characteristics common to all snakes, or many of them. First of all, the Jacobson's organ. Have you ever wondered why the tongue of a snake has this shape? Well,
So it has a larger surface to detect.
True, yes, and also it's basically functions as an olfactory organ, because the snake flickers its tongue in the air, and the tongue can detect smell molecules, which then are transmitted to the Jacobson's organ, which lies a bit further to the brain. And then the Jacobson's organ transmits this information to the brain, which processes them and then gives the snake a detailed picture of where the scent comes from. So this is the strategy that snakes mainly use to detect their prey. This is also why many venomous snakes, when they go for a hunt, they bite their prey, but they don't hold it, because even though the venom is has a pretty fast action, the prey can fight back and can injure the snake. So they just rather bite and let it go because they know that it won't go too far. And then they basically follow the scent of the prey thanks to this strategy, and they find it and can eat it once it is already dead. But actually, snakes are not the only animals who presented the Jacobson's organ. Even dogs have it, but they don't have this kind of tongue because they use their nose as main olfactory organ. Well, the nose of snakes is not that sensitive to smell. It is mainly used for breathing. Then here we are to venom. Actually, I say it again, only 400 snake species out of 3,000 are venomous, but venom is really one of the most interesting features that you can find among snakes. So snake venom is mainly composed of proteins, especially complex mixtures of enzymes, and every venomous snake has a different venom. So basically you can find many similarities, of course, but every venom is a different mixture of enzymes. If we want to make a very broad distinction, we can divide snake venoms between neurotoxic venoms, which act on the nervous system and are typical of elapids, even though it's a very broad distinction again, and hemotoxic venoms that destroy several other tissues such as skin, internal organs, etc., which are more diffused in vipers. Very important, snakes only recur to biting when they feel threatened. There is no such thing as a snake attacking people or attacking anything that is not a prey, basically. Snakes bite only when they feel threatened, and even when they bite, when venomous snakes bite, they often do not inject venom because venom is very precious for them. It's basically the first step in snake digestion. So they don't want to waste it, which is why many snakes usually recur to dry bites. So they do bite, but they do not inject venom, which they can control because they have these muscles controlling the contraction of the venom gland. So they can decide not to contract the venom gland and thus not to eject the venom. Well, they obviously do inject it when they are hunting and they want to kill prey. Here you can see the most venomous snake in the world, the inland taipan from Australia, which is 2 meters long, and it feeds on rodents and lizards. But interestingly, the most venomous snake in the world basically kills very, very few people because it doesn't get into contact with humans that much. It is also a very shy snake, so even when approached, it usually doesn't bite, except when you really force it to. The jaws of a snake are, well, very, very interesting to look at because basically they are not connected by bones, like ours are, for example, so they can dislocate them as much as they want to swallow objects up to 4 times larger than their head. A very famous example is the African egg-eating snake, which feeds mainly on eggs, and you see how much it can spread its mouth to ingest them. And by the way, the shell of the egg is broken once the egg is already inside the snake by muscle contraction. So the snake contracts its muscles and breaks the shell of the egg. While here you can see the same phenomenon on a larger scale with an Australian olive python swallowing a freshwater crocodile. The olive python is the second largest snake in Australia. It can grow up to 5 meters. And it feeds on also crocodiles, as you can see, but mostly on wallabies, which are small kangaroos, birds, and mammals. Then remember what we have said before about pit vipers. This is why they are called pit vipers, because python, boas, and these snakes present small pit organs below their eyes. You can see them here, for example, which are not nostrils, as many people think, but thermoreceptors. So they allow the snake to see infrared radiation, basically. Have you ever tried wearing infrared glasses? And that's basically how they see the world. And these heat pits are extremely sensitive. They can perceive variations as light as 0.05 Celsius degrees. So basically anything that is alive and therefore emits heat is detected by heat pits. Here you can see the Atlantic bushmaster, pit viper from South America, the longest viper in the world, with its heat pits here. And also, this snake has really a badass name, if I may, because, well, already bushmaster is pretty much of a imposing name, but also, if you look at the Latin name, you see Lachesis muta muta. Does anybody of you know who Lachesis is? Well, it's a figure coming from Greek mythology. It's where you can find these three women, very old and ugly women. They actually are deities, so they are immortal, which have the responsibility to decide, yeah, exactly, those ones, to decide about the life of mortals. So there is one of them which makes some cloth that represents the life of the man.
Fate,
yeah, exactly. That one. Then another one who decides how long that has to be, and the third one that cuts it and thus kills the person once the time has come. Lachesis was the one who decided how long the life of man had to be. So yeah, pretty much of a honor for this snake here. Then here underneath you can see the green tree python from Australia, which is one of the most popular pet snakes in the world. It is, you can find it basically in every snake exhibition, in every snake collection in the world, because it is really easy to breed. It is it's a very docile snake. So, and it's also very beautiful because its color is really so bright. It is a rainforest snake again, and it feeds on birds, rodents, and amphibians basically. The last peculiar trait of snakes we're going to examine today is skin shedding. Actually, also lizards shed their skin, but snakes are mostly famous for doing that. So this is because the skin of the snake does not grow with the snake, so the snake has to change it over time as much as it grows during life. And it's also interesting the fact that the rattle of rattlesnakes is composed of keratin segments that derive from skin shedding. So after each shed, a new segment is added, as you can see here. So the longer the rattle, the older the snake. So this one belonged to a very old rattlesnake, as you can see here. So here you see an eastern milk snake shedding its skin. This species can be found all around the east coast of the United States, from Massachusetts to North Carolina, basically. It's not venomous, and it feeds on rodents, lizards, and other snakes as well. Some fun facts about snakes. First, their reproduction. I've chosen these two species because they have very peculiar reproductive behaviors. Here you see the green anaconda, the heaviest snake in the world, from South America. You can find it from Colombia to southern Brazil in swamps and rainforests. It is a mostly aquatic snake. It can grow up to 6 meters, and during mating season, a female is surrounded by up to 12 males in what is called a breeding ball, and then the males fight and try to mate with her, and this goes on for about 2 weeks. So yeah, females are much larger than males usually. Then here you can see a much smaller snake, the common garter snake, from northern USA and southern Canada, which doesn't grow longer than 1.5 meters. So after brumation ends, because these snakes live in regions with a very cold climate in winter, so they undergo brumation. After this period ends, the garter snakes gather in groups of thousands to mate. Also here with a ratio of 1 female for every 10 males. So the males rush incredibly fast to find the female, but only one out of 10 manages to actually get with the female. Basically like a Thursday night in the bar.
Just the other way around.
Yeah.
Here you see another very famous snake, the sidewinder, which gives the name to the US Navy missile, basically. So the sidewinder is a rattlesnake that lives in desert areas. So in those areas the soil is very hot, especially during the day, and the snake would risk to be literally fried up if if it would normally slither on the sand and on the soil. So they developed this particular way of slithering, which exposes only 1/3 of their body to contact with the sand at any given time, as you see here. So here you see the sidewinder rattlesnake in the US, which employs this technique, but also other snakes, such as the Paraguay's adder in Namibia, rely on this mode of locomotion, which is a remarkable example of convergent evolution. It basically works like this. They only get 1/3 of their body in contact with the sand every time. Well, it could be a new school class, maybe. Yeah, the sidewinder and the Paraguay's adder are actually very small snakes. They rarely grow further than 1 meter. And also the venom of the sidewinder, it is dangerous for humans, but very rarely fatal. It's much weaker than that of other rattlesnakes. And now, yeah, when people think of how snakes move, first of all, yeah, they slither, of course. Then they can also swim. All snakes can swim, not only sea snakes. But yeah, what if I told you that some snakes can fly? Pretty surprising. Yes, but actually the snakes of the genus Chrysopelia, which belongs to the Colubridae family, are called flying snakes because they are able to glide for 150 meters. They jump off trees basically, and then they glide. They don't actually fly, they glide for 150 meters before landing. They do that if a predator is approaching them, they just fly away, basically. So how do they do that? The snake basically expands its ribs, so it enlarges its body surface, thereby increasing the resistance it offers to air, and thus it is able to glide. And they are even able to control their direction while they are doing this, so they can turn, they can shift their direction. They really mastered it. So here you see one of the members of the Chrysopelia genus, the paradise flying snake. Very common in Southeast Asia and in the Philippines. Not a very large snake. It usually is only 1.5 meters long. It is very mildly toxic, completely harmless for humans. It can barely kill a jinko, basically. And yeah, it feeds on amphibians, lizards, and small rodents. It is also a very beautiful snake. Yeah, one of the many misconceptions people have about snakes, yeah, you hear that a lot. Oh God, snakes are so ugly. Yeah, really? You're kidding me. So I provided you with some example. I want to provide you with some example that basically prove that this statement is completely wrong. First, the so-called dragon snake. Well, actually, the genus Ateres, to which this snake belongs, is very famous for this appearance that resembles very much a dragon. This is the variable bush viper. It is actually a very small snake. It's only 80 centimeters long. It lives in rainforests in Western and Central Africa, and yeah, its venom can provoke dangerous symptoms in humans, but again, it's rarely fatal for us. It feeds on small lizards, arthropods, insects, and worms and frogs. And it has really great color variability. You can find red and orange specimens, but also green, gray, even blue in captivity. And yeah, the scales really make it look like a dragon, like a small dragon. Actually, yeah, when I started watching Game of Thrones last year, I remember the scenes when Daenerys Targaryen was with her baby dragons, and they actually look a bit like this. So maybe the Benioff and Weiss got inspired by this snake. Who knows? Second one, the Brazilian rainbow boa. Well, this is actually a very famous pet snake again, because basically you see it. It's so beautiful. It grows up to 2 meters, and you can find it all around South America, from Venezuela to Brazil. It is a rainforest snake again. And this effect, this wonderful rainbow effect, is produced by the reflection of light on its scales. This phenomenon can also be seen in other snakes, like such as the scrub python, which lives in Australia, but this is the most famous case. Last one, to honor Siam maybe, the Mangshan pit viper from China, which is a very rare snake. There are only 500 individuals left in the wild because illegal pet trade has been really decimating their population, and no wonder that so many collectors want to have this snake because, well, you see its color is just stunning. There's no Photoshop here. That's really its color. So it is pretty large for a viper. It can reach 2 meters, and it is extremely vulnerable, as we have already said. And interestingly, it is one of the only 2 non-cobra species that can spit their venom, because some snakes, most of which are cobras, the so-called spitting cobras, can actually spit their venom in the eyes of predators or opponents when they see them, and they have a range of 3 meters. They are surprisingly precise in doing that. They can do this because their teeth have a specific canal that allows venom to burst out of the tooth when they contract the venom gland. As I said, basically all of the snakes of the venom spitting species are cobras, with the only 2 exceptions being this viper and an elapid called the ringcal, which looks very similar to cobras, but it's not actually a cobra. So this was basically it. I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and if you had some prejudices and very negative opinion about snakes, I hope I managed to make you change your mind at least a little bit. Thank you very much.